is up, everybody? Welcome to Pub Sports Radio and welcome to Stat Diggers for UFC 284. We have Islam Makhachev going against Alexander Volkanovski. Nice little pay-per-view card here. I believe we have 13 fights to talk about. And yeah, I think there's some good spots that are sticking out. I'm looking forward to talking through it with the chat with Uncle Weezy. Speaking of Weezy, what is up? Are you looking forward to this card?
Definitely. I mean, it's a great card. We got two great 5-round fights on this card. Great main card, pay-per-view. And it's kind of like this reverse shit sandwich right now that we're dealing with two ass cards back, the Lewis card, and then the next card after this one is not going to be full of great names. Let's just put it that way. But this one in the middle is definitely the treat for us UFC fans here. Is we've got a lot of really interesting fighters on this card going down under to Australia. And we're going to see some really great fights. So I'm looking forward to chopping this up with you, Brady, and the chat, figuring out some ways to stack cash tickets like flapjacks for this event.
Let's do it, Weezy. Before we get started, guys, if you guys can please leave a like on the video, subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Also consider becoming a member here at Pub Sports Radio, and then also consider joining the weekly contest. Go to pubsportsradio.com. If you don't have an account, make an account. It's quick, it's easy, and it's basically like a prediction competition on Tapology, just like Tapology, where you pick the fighter, the round, the method, and then it's $100 each week to whoever gets first place. So be sure to check that out on pubsportsradio.com. Enter that contest. I am definitely in there each and every week. All right, I do want to shout out the chat as well before we get started. We got Mark, first one in here. What is up, Mark? We got Propaholic in the chat. We got Michael. We got Chronic Combat Conversation, Mushroom. We got Lou Betcha. We got Lou in the chat, Lou Sasshole. There I said it. Josh Locks. We got Modern Day Shaman. We got Tony in the chat. We got Alan. We got Sean. We got Glimbot. Addicted to Combat. We got Bucky's. We got Justin. What is up, everybody? I see you, Jeff, as well. Jared in there. And I do want to shout out Tony. Tony with the $9.99. Appreciate you, Tony, saying love the work you guys do. Great card last night. Won 12 units. Heck yeah, man. On a card like last night, winning really anything is definitely a good thing. Tons of violence, and everyone got a win with no Mandy Bum fight. Yeah, I thought the Mandy Bum fight being called off was a blessing to the card, to be honest. But I know a lot of people that were on Gian Kim as a parlay piece. I see you in there, Zero, as well. Any action as well. What's up, guys? So, Weezy, we're going to do like a quick recap of last night. I know you didn't have much action, but I heard you had a winning night.
Yeah, I mean, a very small winning night. And we talk about how important bankroll management is. And I was on vacation in Florida celebrating my dad's 80th birthday. So, and then I've also been rebuilding the whole database from scratch, Brady. So I've been having to redo the fighter histories from scratch. I've had a lot of behind the scenes work, which have really cut into my analysis time, my ability to be able to watch tape. So, whenever I don't watch much tape, I try to keep it as small as possible. And I had one bet, which was great, and one bet, which was flat out embarrassing. And really one of the worst bets that I've made in a long time. 1 unit on the Dennis Tialulin money line. And let me tell you something. It does sting less, Brady, when you get a plus 199 number. But, boy, it stings a little less. But, boy, did he get his ass shaved in there. That wasn't even close. First takedown attempt, he gets mounted, gets the shit beaten out of him for a good 3.5 minutes before he gets finished. So that was brutal. But I also had a half unit on a Hyun-Sung Park inside the distance. And I thought Hyun-Sung Park would go to the wrestling and grappling earlier, but he stood with Choi for the first 2 rounds, didn't even attempt a takedown. And then the first takedown he attempts, he gets his back and chokes him out. So plus 275, a half unit. That won me like 1.3 something units. So yeah, up 0.3 units on only 1.5 units invested. So nothing wrong with that night, but they're not going to put me on the Mount Rushmore of MMA gamblers winning 0.3 units per week. So time to step it up, time to analyze all 13 of these fights, Brady, get some real money down on some fighters that have got some good histories. We got all the stats here. We got all the distance striking stats, strength of schedule, all these new numbers, which you guys haven't had to see up until last week. We can really start taking this statistical analysis of these fights to the next level now that we have these distance striking numbers.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, like you mentioned, bankroll management's key, man, especially on a card like that. My bankroll management was interesting. I had a lot of bets, and I think I had 9 bets, but the unit sizing was pretty small. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of newcomers. So the losses, we'll start with the losses. So I had 1.5 units on the Duho Choi, Kyle Nelson under 2.5 rounds. That really wasn't close. I also had Da Un Jung inside the distance, half unit plus 120, which by the way, what was up with Da Un Jung last night? I mean, he looked atrocious.
Yeah, and and it's happened before. Da Un Jung can be a little bit weird. Like he went out there against William Knight and looked like a all-world wrestler. He went out there against Kennedy and Checkwu and absolutely went through him like a hot knife through butter. But then he goes hammering tongs with Sam Alvey, and then same thing with Devin Clark. So he's one of those fighters. He's kind of tough to figure out. He's up and down. So I'm glad I stayed away from that fight as a whole.
Yeah, Da Un bum after that performance. But and then the other loss was I had the Jung Young Lee Yiza fight won't start round 3 in a parlay. But those were the 3 losses. The wins were I had the Kinoshita Adam Fugit under 2.5 rounds, 1.5 units minus 130. Glad to see Fugit pull off the big upset there. I had 1 unit. This is my favorite bet, Weezy. I had 1 unit on the Toshiomi Kazama Rinya Nakamura under 2.5 rounds. I knew that was cashing within the first 5 seconds. The way what's his face Kazama went out there and approached the fight. Just a terrible game plan and quite frankly a terrible haircut from him. I wish I would have went heavier on that, but I wanted to be kind of light on these road to UFC fights. The other win I had was I love this bet as well. Sunguk Choi Hung Sung Park. The fight doesn't go to decision, half a unit plus 160. I thought that Park, he's a finisher. Obviously, he hadn't been to decision in like 5 years. I thought plus 160 was kind of wild for that. Even consider the inside the distance like you did. And then I had the Jubilee Saragi fight doesn't go to decision, parlayed with the Lewis Spivak under 3.5. That came out to plus 101. And then I had the under 2.5 in the Tyara fight, parlay with the Lewis Spivak under 3.5. That came out to plus 101. So yeah, a total of 1.11 units. Yeah, like I said, pretty happy with my bet sizing on a card like that. So starting the year out with 3 winning events in a row, hoping to make it 4 for this card. I do already have 2 bets that we'll talk about during the show. But Weezy, I say we get into it, and we're going to start with the first fight on the card. And we have Zubaira Tukhugov going against Elvis Brenner. We got Tukhugov is 32 years old, 5'8" with a 68-inch reach. And we have Brenner, who is 25 years old, 5'9". We are not sure on the reach there, but Tukhugov, he is, I think, 2-2-1 draw in his last 5 fights. Had a decision loss to Renato Moicano, had a draw against Lerone Murphy, had a knockout win against Kevin Aguilar, had a decision loss to Hakeem Dawadu, and then had a decision win against Ricardo Ramos. As far as Elvis Brenner, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He had a submission win, 2 decision losses, and then 2 submission wins after that, making his debut here on short notice. And we see that Tukhugov is the biggest favorite on the card, and I can absolutely see why. And I think this line is going to continue to, keep getting wider. Like Tukhugov has fought the much better competition, and it's just not even comparable. I mean, you see it right there in the last 5. Guys like Ramos, guys like Dawadu, guys like Renato Moicano, right? He's fought the much, much better competition. And I think he's a more well-rounded fighter as well. Like Brenner, he's a grappler. He's dangerous off his back. And Tukhugov, if he does take the fight down to the mat, he's going to have to mind his P's and Q's. But Brenner's takedown defense is non-existent. And on the feet, it should be Tukhugov. Like Tukhugov, this guy can crack. He hits hard. He has multiple knockdowns in the UFC. He has a couple knockouts as well. And I actually think this is a sneaky, fight doesn't go to decision spot. Like the under 2.5 is at plus 155. We have a guy in Brenner who doesn't go to decision that often coming in on short notice. And like I said, Tukhugov, he puts a lot into his shot. So I like Tukhugov here. I really don't mind him as a parlay piece at minus 500, but I don't think that line is going to be there much longer. And then, like I said, I'm also potentially looking at a sneaky under in this spot as well. But I just wasn't impressed with Brenner. I don't think he's UFC caliber. And quite frankly, I feel like they could have got someone else to step in on short notice here. Weezy, any thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, it's weird because, we got to keep in mind for every single fight this week, Brady, that it's in Australia. So a lot of times a guy like Tukhugov, who's really only been fighting in Dubai recently, or at least been scheduled to fight there, he doesn't seem to be in Russia anymore. I think he's definitely in Dubai. So he's trying to stay close to that area. Now, he was supposed to fight somebody else. That fight fell off. So now when you're getting short notice fighters to come fight Australian fighters in Australia for the most part, I mean, Zubaira is not Australian, obviously, but he's fairly close to there, being in Dubai. So it's not going to be easy to find guys to take these fights. And it's just kind of weird because Brenner's 2-2 in his last 4, and he's lost to guys named Sergey Andreev and Gabriel Santos. I don't know how good each of those guys are, but you look at Tukugov, who's been in there with Ramos and Dawoodu and Aguilar and Murphy and Moicano. I mean, and having close competitive fights with, you know, guys that are 2-3 notches the level of competition above what Elvis Brenner's been facing on the regional scene, where he's been having some, you know, moderate success. We look at Elvis Brenner's numbers, Brady. 84.62% of his pro wins are by submission, 7.61 by knockout. So 12 of his 13 wins are inside the distance. And then we've seen Tukugov finish 2 of his 5 UFC wins, both by knockout, and he's a 35% finisher as a whole. 13-3-1 in decisions as a pro, while Elvis Brenner is 1-3 in decisions. So Elvis Brenner is basically submission or bust, and his last 2 losses were by decision. It's going to be interesting because I agree with you that plus money number is very intriguing when you got a killer, you know, not a kill or be killed fighter, but at least a great finisher in Brenner, who, you know, because he's taking the fight on short notice, kind of might be balls out. He might have an adrenaline dump here. He's going to be, you know, several hours out of his usual time zone from flying from Brazil to all the way to Australia. So, and also taking the fight on short notice. We don't know what kind of conditioning he's going to be in. Tukugov's strength of schedule here is a 1.24 overall. He's facing winning condition or winning fighters. He's beating guys that have just under a 1 win-loss ratio. But you look at this, you know, 16 takedowns for Tukugov, and he's never been taken down. 16-0, he's out takedowning his opponents. You know, he's got 66% distance striking defense, and he spends 83% of his time at distance. So he's done really well keeping fights standing, and when he does want to go to the ground, he's able to get it there and actually win some minutes on the ground as well. So, yeah, it does look like he's going to be a lot more well-rounded than this guy, while Brenner is going to be a lot more of a submission or bust guy. It's nice to see, if you're on the Tukugov side, that the guy's got 100% takedown defense at the UFC level. So if Brenner can't get this to the ground, he's probably going to have to stand with Zubaira. And Zubaira's got power, man. He finds the chin of his opponent, and he does have some knockdowns at the UFC level. So, yeah, this should be a pretty clear win here for Tukugov. Brenner, you know, I have to watch tape on this guy still, but when I see the record and I see the opponents, I'm not entirely sure that he's ready to be at this level yet, especially on short notice against a 26-fight veteran in Tukugov, who's very well-rounded and very dangerous.
Yep, and I think that's why we see the line here. Tukugov opened up minus 500. He's currently minus 550. It looks like money's coming in on him as we speak. Brenner is currently a plus 400 dog. Over under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 minus 185. The under 2.5 is plus 155. The fight goes to decision minus 145, and the fight doesn't go plus 105. I'll probably be taking a contrarian look at that fight doesn't go to decision, because I think Brenner's kind of screwed on the feet here, and Tukugov does have power. And if this fight does hit the mat, you know, Brenner's path to victory is literally a submission off his back. So I'll be looking at violence. Like I said, Tukugov has a potential parlay piece, but that line is kind of getting away as we speak there. All right, let us keep moving on to the next fight. We have a fight that I think it'll be fun, but I just don't have a ton of interest from like a betting perspective. We got Shane Young going against Blake Builder. We got Shane Young, 29 years old, 5'8" with a 72-inch reach. Blake Builder, 32 years old, 5'8" with a 68-inch reach. Builder making his debut here at 32 years old. He is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Shane Young is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He had a decision loss to Alexander Volkanovski. He had a knockout win after that against Rolando Dai. He had a decision win against Austin Arnett, a knockout loss against Ludovic Klein, and then a decision loss to Omar Morales. This is a pretty closely lined fight, and I can kind of see why. I do slightly lean Shane Young, though. I think Shane Young has obviously fought the much better competition. You got a guy like Volkanovski on the resume. On paper, he does have like a 55% takedown defense, but a lot of that was due to Volkanovski. But I think Shane Young does have pretty solid takedown defense, a pretty solid get up game, and on the feet, Shane Young is going to have the advantage here. What I like most about Shane Young is the pressure, the pace, the volume, and the toughness. This guy's tough. 19 professional fights, only been knocked out once. I believe it was by Ludovic Klein by head kick. But yeah, I like the cardio as well, whereas Blake Bilder is going to want to get this fight down to the mat. And if he does, he's very dangerous there. So got kind of a striker versus grappler matchup. Like I said, I think it's going to be a fun fight, but it's a fight I don't really have a too strong of a lean on. So I'm probably going to pass here, but the pick is going to be Shane Young here. Weezy, any thoughts about this fight?
Yeah, so Young, like you said, it's going to be a little bit of a striker versus grappler, but you mentioned the pressure and the pace of Shane Young is definitely his best weapon. Look at these numbers. Significant strikes attempted per minute, 12.8. 11.3 coming back his way. So he throws 1.5 more significant strikes per minute than his opponents do. He's landing 5.22 while his opponents land 5. And at distance, he's throwing almost 17 significant strike attempts for every minute that he's at distance, lands 6.61 and absorbs 5.75. So it's almost one more significant strike per minute that he's landing than his opponents. And it is a very high volume pace here. But 3 for 13 on his takedowns. He's getting out-controlled 17.6% to 10%. And yeah, 56% takedown defense on the aggregate. We're going to have to see, when Bilder takes this step up, and once again, you got an American going all the way to Australia. We were talking about that when we were down in Florida because my girlfriend has family down there, and she was talking about that flight. It's something like 19 hours, on a flight from the U.S. to Australia. And depending on where you go in Australia, you might have another 3 or 4 hours to get to your destination from wherever it is that you land there. So it's going to be big for these American athletes, for these European athletes, these South American athletes that are making this trip to Australia. It's something you really have to keep in your mind when you're capping these fights, because that is something that it takes some time getting used to, being in 2 different hemispheres. You go from the Eastern hemisphere to the Western, and then you're going from the Northern to the Southern, and then you're on a plane for 19 hours straight, which is just crazy. So while Shane Young hasn't been the most impressive UFC fighter, 2-3 record at the UFC level, the wins are against Rolando D and Austin Arnett. These are not high-level names. And, the losses to guys like Morales and Klein are a little bit worrisome. But Bilder's a good prospect, but he's still 32 years old, so he's not a young prospect. So, 4-inch reach advantage for Shane Young, 11 more professional fights, 5 more fights at the UFC level. Both of these guys finish fights. Both of these guys are fairly durable. It should be a very interesting fight. I've got to see more tape on Bilder, but it should be a close one, in my opinion.
Yeah, the under 2.5 is a very popular play, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to hop on it. It's because, like you said, both guys, they're finishers. Like Shane Young, a 77% finish rate, 46 by knockout, 31% by submission. Bilder, a 71% finish rate, 14% by knockout, 57% by submission. It's just they're so tough, especially Shane Young. 20 or 19 fights, only finished once, and Bilder's never been finished in 7 fights. But we have 2 good finishers, a striker versus grappler matchup, a fight that I think is going to be very exciting with a lot of action. So I could see a potential finish here, but I don't know if I'm going to get there myself. I think the under 2.5 right now is like plus 105. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 125. Shane Young opened up minus 130. He's currently minus 134. Bilder opened up plus 110. He's currently plus 114. Looks like money's coming in on Shane Young. I don't have much interest here from a money line perspective. Weezy, any thoughts on the line or the total or anything?
Yeah, I think it's right about where it should be, because we're missing a little bit of information on Bilder. How's he going to do, going all the way to Australia? How is he going to handle this UFC debut? And against the guy who's going to be fighting at home in front of a very friendly crowd. Could be an adrenaline dump here. We got to find out a lot about Bilder. It's going to be a show me spot for him, but it's a good level of competition for him to get his UFC debut against. Shane Young is a beatable fighter at this level, but we're going to find out whether Bilder's got the chops to do it at this level. Because, man, making your UFC debut in Australia is a tall order, especially when you're fighting a hometown guy. So, yeah, I would stay away from this one. But fight doesn't go is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. The toughness factor kind of scares me off a little bit, but I think stylistically and these guys being dangerous, whether it's Bilder on the mat, Young on the feet, I think that I wouldn't hate the play.
Yep. Yeah, this is a fun fight, though. I guarantee that this is going to be high volume. There's probably going to be some ups and downs, some knockdowns. This should be a really fun fight.
Yes, sir. And speaking of fun fights, Weezy, we have the people's main event. We have Loma, the very handsome Luke Boonmi, going against Elise Reed. We got Loma. She is 27 years old, 5'1" with a 61-inch reach, going against Elise Reed, 30 years old, 5'3" with a 63-inch reach. We have Loma Luke Boonmi, who is 3-2 in her last 5 fights, a decision loss to Angela Hill, a decision win against Jin Yu Fry, a decision win against Sam Hughes, a decision loss to Lupita Godinez, and then a decision win against Denise Gomes. As far as Elise Reed, she is 3-2 in her last 5 fights as well. She had a knockout loss against Ciara Eubanks, TKO loss in the first round, a split decision win against Corey McKenna, a TKO loss against Sam Hughes in the third round, and then a decision win against Melissa Martinez. So Weezy, the handsome fighter did not win last night in Blagoy Ivanov, but I think the handsome fighter in this fight is going to pull it off here in Loma. I like Loma a lot. Like, she's only 27 years old, and each time we see Loma Luke Boonmi, it seems like she adds something new to her game. Like, on the feet, especially like in the clinch against the cage, she's very dangerous. She's always throwing those knees and has nasty elbows. But what impresses me the most about Loma is her sneaky takedowns. Like, she can get takedowns throughout the fight, and when she gets on top, she's dangerous as well with those elbows. And I feel like in this fight, she just has Elise Reed beat, pretty much everywhere. I think on the feet, at range, that's probably where Elise Reed is going to have the majority of the success. But even then, like, Loma throws great kicks, hard kicks. But when this fight is in the clinch, it's going to be Loma by a mile. And if this fight hits the mat and Loma gets on top, that's going to be a problem. We saw I know it's a much different situation where Elise Reed was up a weight class and Eubanks is much bigger, but Eubanks is not finishing anybody. And we saw Eubanks just run right through Elise Reed. And then even more concerning, we saw Sam Hughes go out there, just consistently take down Elise Reed and just eventually finish her in the third round. I think if Loma can go for takedowns here and get on top, she's shown a pretty good ground game for being a Muay Thai fighter. And like I said, that Muay Thai is no joke. So I like Loma here quite a bit. I don't really see much of a path to victory for Reed, and Loma is a pretty big favorite. Yeah, I like Loma to get it done here. I'm going with the very handsome fighter in this one, Weezy. I know we did cash that bet last time with Elise Reed against Melissa Martinez at plus money, but I think this is a much more difficult matchup for her. Weezy, what do you think of this matchup? You think it's gonna be a fun one?
Yeah, I've had a lot of success betting on Elise Reed fights. I was big on Ciara Eubanks over Elise Reed. That was one that was just a complete mismatch, and really Elise had no chance there. And then, Corey McKenna should have beaten Elise Reed easily, but she just fought really dumb in that one. But we've seen Corey McKenna have 2 spectacular performances after that, hiccup in her career. And then I had Sam Hughes. I had a bet on Sam Hughes over Elise Reed. She won that. And then I cashed on Elise Reed over Melissa Martinez. So I feel like I've got a really good handle on Elise Reed fights. And Loma I've been staying away from her fights pretty much. But yeah, I think Loma Luke Boonmi and Tatsuro Taira might have the exact same barber, or at least, those two, if they are different barbers, they probably studied at the same school or something like that. But Elise going to be 2 inches taller, 2-inch reach advantage. I like that Elise is trading at Fortis. She's definitely starting to round out her game there. They have a similar amount of pro experience, but Loma with a couple more fights and some more minutes in the cage and 2 more fights at the UFC level and about twice as much time in the UFC cage. Elise Reed, a knockout artist with 33% of her pro wins coming by knockout. Loma, 14.29% of her 7 wins coming by knockout. So only Out of 3 of 13 combined wins for these ladies have been inside the distance. Loma's been finished once. I think it was her first fight. And Elise Reed has been finished both times that she's lost, once by Sajara, once by Sam Hughes. When it comes to the striking, Elise is going to be a little bit taller, a little bit longer. She's got a Taekwondo style, while Loma's got a Muay Thai style. If we look at these distance striking numbers, we like what we're seeing there with Loma, landing about 0.9 more at distance per minute than her opponents are, and she's throwing almost one more significant strike attempt. She's right on the level with accuracy with Reed, but the defense is a tick better at about 62%, while it's 60% for Reed. But both of these ladies land more distance strikes per minute than they absorb, and they both have better than 60% striking defense at distance. Neither one of them has ever been knocked down, but Elise Reed does have a knockdown as she's landed one knockdown. 0.96% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed, and 0.31 knockdowns per 15 minutes that she's landed at distance. So when it comes to the grappling, what's kind of interesting here is that Elise Reed is 100% on her takedown attempts, but she's getting 8.25% control time, and she's giving up 46% control time, while Loma is actually getting out-controlled as well. She gets 16% control time, but she's allowed 30. And Loma is actually trying almost as many takedowns as her opponents are. So the thing you got to worry about here, if you have money on Loma Lubunmi, is what if Elise Reed's grappling is getting better? Because let's not forget that these two ladies have a very similar skill set. They're both strikers first. Elise has just started to show at the age of 30 that she can mix in some grappling when she's got an advantage on the ground, like she did against Melissa Martinez. And Loma has also mixed in the wrestling as well. But both of these ladies are being out-controlled at serious rates. I don't know if either one of them is a great wrestler at this point. So if this winds up being a striking match, and Elise Reed can use that Taekwondo style to kind of maintain range and try to win a distance striking battle, it could be kind of close here. I'm maybe on this Elise Reed money line side, or at least thinking about it, because I know that, and then plus it's women's MMA. I want to be on that plus money side way more times than I want to be paying juice here. So I think it's a very interesting fight. I like what I've seen out of Reed lately. I think she's rounding out her game. She's at the right camp there in Fortis MMA. And we got Loma's at a great camp there at Bangtao Muay Thai in Thailand. So I think that this is going to be a really good fight. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than what the line says it's going to look like. And I think there could be some value on that Elise Reed money line here.
Yeah, for me, I'm going the other way. Like, Loma's probably my most confident pick on the card. So I know I said I was going to stop laying chalk on women's MMA, but I think I might lay it here. And I was telling you earlier before the show, I have a hot take. I think Loma runs through Elise Reed and finishes her. I think she gets on top, lands elbows, and the ref steps in, and Loma gets a TKO. So I will be playing Loma in some type of fashion, whether it's a parlay, or I might just lay, I see minus 250 out there on draft, and I might just lay that straight. And then I'm also going to be taking a look at the Loma inside the distance. I know she's not finished anybody, but Ciara Eubanks didn't finish anybody. Sam Hughes wasn't finishing anybody. So I think if Loma gets on top, I think she pounds away with those nasty elbows, I think she can get a finish. And Loma Lukumi inside the distance is plus 285. So but yeah, it's women's MMA. So how confident really should I be? But I just don't know. I mean, I think Elise Reed's path to victory is them standing at range for 15 minutes and it being like a close, controversial decision. But that's just not Loma's game. Like, she's gonna get the fight in the clinch. She can get takedowns. So yeah, I might lay the chalk here with Loma. I know it's crazy to say my most confident pick is on this fight, but man, I really do like Loma in this spot. Loma opened up a minus 265 favorite. She's currently minus 270. Elise Reed opened up plus 225. She's currently plus 230. But yeah, that minus 250 on DraftKings has my attention. And then she's minus 310 on FanDuel there. The over 2.5 is completely juiced to -300. The under 2.5 is +240. The fight goes to decision -270. The fight doesn't go to decision is +190. I'm taking the handsome fighter, Weezy. I might look like an idiot, but I'm pretty confident in Loma this week.
Well, don't forget too, Elise Reed making a long ass trip to Australia. They didn't bring her in there to beat the hometown favorite here. I mean, I know Thailand isn't hometown to Australia, but it's close by, and there are clearly in every fight on this card, there's a hometown guy, and then there's somebody that's making a trip to fight the hometown guy. And when you have that hometown guy in Australia, it makes a difference when you got to make that long of a trip. So very tall order here for Elise Reed. But man, if she pulls this off, she's going to be, poised to make a little bit of a run here, I think. But it's a very, very, very tall order for her.
Well, if she does win, it wouldn't be the first time she got me. I was really, really confident in Corey McKinnon. She got me there, but
yeah, that was just such a bad performance by Corey, and she's really kind of figured it out going forward. So that's good, because Corey, that's her only setback in the UFC is Elise Reed. So yeah, you got to watch out for this one. But I'm looking forward to this fight.
Yep, it should be a very handsome fight nonetheless. All right, let us move on to the next fight. We have Jack Jenkins going against Don Shainis. We got Jack Jenkins, 29 years old, 5'7" with a 68-inch reach. Don Shainis, 32 years old, 5'6" with a 67-inch reach. We got Jenkins 3 years younger, a 1-inch height advantage and a 1-inch reach advantage. Jack Jenkins is making his debut after a third-round TKO on the Contender Series, and Don Shainis is returning after a short notice spot against Sadiq Yusuff, where he did get subbed in less than a minute. Yeah, I don't have much interest in this fight as well, Weezy. We have Jenkins, who's a pretty big favorite. I'm not completely sold on him in general, but I do think he wins this matchup, but I don't want to lay like this much chalk on the guy. Don Shainis is kind of a madman. Like, you take a look at his last 5 fights, he's going in there and he's going for takedowns early. You see that the Jay Ellis win on there as well, where he took down Jay Ellis, slammed him down, and eventually got the finish there. And he's kind of going after it really, really early. And I feel like he could have some success taking down Jenkins early, but I'm not sure he's going to be able to keep at that pace for 15 minutes. On the feet, it's Jack Jenkins. He's a very good striker. And I think Jenkins has some pretty solid wrestling offensively and defensively as well. But yeah, I think Jenkins does win this fight, but he's going to have to weather kind of a storm because Shainis does go after it early. Yeah, not much interest here for me. I'm going to take Jenkins to win, probably by second round knockout, but from a betting perspective, I'm probably going to stay away. Weezy should be another fun fight here.
Yeah, and Shainis is a good regional scene fighter. 12-4 record as a pro, 6 years as a pro. And he's well rounded. He lands some shots on the feet. He mixes in the wrestling and the grappling. He's had some 5-round contests, I believe, as well. So he's been around. He's fought Nasty Nate Williams, Lencioni, Pfister, Sadiq Yusuff. He got his ass shaved by Sadiq, but he came in on short notice, against a guy that's 7-1 in the UFC, I believe, right now. So, don't count out Shainis, but, they didn't fly him all the way to Australia to beat the hometown guy. This guy Jenkins seems to be a pretty good prospect, not even 30 years old yet. He switches stances. He's going to be taller. He's going to be longer. And he's not at that much of an experience disadvantage here. He's got 4 less fights than Shainis, but they actually have about the same amount of time in the pro cage here. And Shainis has actually been in the UFC cage, albeit for a very short period of time, about 30 seconds before Sadiq got him out of there. And, and the thing about Shainis, Brady, is that, he just looks really undersized. Not only is he undersized for 145, but this guy was fighting at 155 too. And he's just really small. I feel like this guy could probably make 135 if he wanted to. He just doesn't look big at all for the division. But I need to see more of Jenkins, so I need to study the tape on him. But I've seen the tape on Shainis, and, he's kind of good everywhere. And he's kind of a solid regional scene guy that can win those regional scene belts. But, when he takes that step up to the UFC level, you're going to see, that he doesn't have great speed. He doesn't have great size. He doesn't have great explosiveness. What he does have is that he's tough. He's well-rounded. He's got good game plans. He sets up different game plans for different opponents, and he uses that wrestling and that grappling and that grinding that he goes after in order to win minutes and win rounds and win fights. So it's going to be an interesting one. But like I say, tall order for this kid Shane is to come in, fly all the way to Australia to beat this guy Jenkins, who's going to be the hometown guy.
Yep, and we see that Jenkins is a pretty big favorite. Opened up minus 300, currently minus 335. Don Shainis opened up plus 240, currently plus 275. Yeah, I want nothing to do with that line. Like, if anything, it'd probably be a shot on Shainis, to be honest. But yeah, I think Jenkins does win, but I'm not laying minus 335 on the guy.
Yeah, I want to see what Jenkins' grappling and wrestling defense look like, because Shainis can go out there and get takedowns. Not unlike what Yi Jia did to Jun Yong Lee. You know, I mean, he could push that type of a game plan here, and you know, and if he wins rounds like Yi Jia did, you know, and as long as the judges don't fuck him over, he could absolutely potentially pull this off. But man, like I say, I don't like any of these Americans making that long ass flight to Australia to fight hometown guys, especially when they're not the kind of, I mean, like Don Shainis doesn't get you that excited. These people, you know, Elise Reed doesn't have you being like, oh yeah, she's going to go out there and beat the Thai fighter. You know, Blake Builder, Elvis Brenner, you know, I mean, we're yet to find a guy that looks like, you know, he was brought in to really have a really close fight or potentially win here. I think the closest that we can find thus far is Builder, because Shane Young has just been, you know, a middling UFC level fighter thus far.
Yeah, agreed. I think a lot of these fights are kind of setup fights, right, to get some of these other guys to get a win. I agree.
That's what all of them have looked like so far. But we do have a couple of short notice opponents, and we've got another short notice opponent here. But this one's going to be very interesting. Malarkey Prado.
Oh, yeah, this fight's awesome. We got Jamie Malarkey going against Francisco Prado. We got Malarkey, 28 years old, 6 foot with a 74-inch reach. We got Prado, only 20 years old, 5'10", with a 71-inch reach. Francisco Prado is undefeated, 11-0, obviously 5-0 in his last 5 fights, all 5 of those coming by finish, and all 100% of his wins coming by finish as well. Jamie Malarkey looks like 3-2 in his last 5 fights, had his decision loss to Faraz Ziam, a knockout win against Kama Worthy, a really good knockout win against Devontae Smith, a knockout loss to Jalen Turner, and then a split decision win against Michael Johnson. Yeah, this Prado guy, he has not fought the best competition, but man, this guy has a ton of power. He has very good wrestling. He's very dangerous when he gets to fight down to the mat, but it's kind of hard to tell how good this guy is because he's not really fighting anybody. This is going to be by far the toughest test of his career. And like you said, Weezy, he's taken this fight on short notice, which I don't really like that. Some other things I don't like about Prado is I think Jamie Malarkey, he's very hittable. I think he has a 53% strike and defense. He blocks a lot of punches with his face. Prado is very, very hittable, and that concerns me. His cardio also really concerns me as well. And on top of that, like I said, he's taken this fight on short notice. It's another matchup where I think it's a tough spot here for Prado. I think the 11-0 is a little bit deceiving. There's a lot of 0-0 guys on his record, but I think he's okay. But you know, coming in here on short notice against Jamie Malarkey, a guy as tough as Jamie Malarkey is going to be kind of tough to do. I think maybe Prado has some success early, but as the fight goes on, it should be Jamie Malarkey. I like the forward pressure of Malarkey, the power. This Malarkey guy, he's a finisher. 15 wins, I think 13 of them coming inside the distance, has a lot of power. And I think this fight's going to look a little bit like Jamie Malarkey's fight against Devontae Smith, where he had to kind of weather a little bit early storm at the beginning, but when the second round hit, he started to really put it on Devontae Smith, started to mix it up to the body, and just kind of broke him. I think he's going to break Prado here, but Prado, like I said, he's going to have opportunities early on, but as the fight gets extended, it should be Malarkey taking over, and I think Malarkey does finish this in the second round. I think it's a really good violent spot as well. I did bet the under 2.5 rounds last week at minus 130. I think it's like minus 145 now, just because Prado, he's never been over 2.5 rounds. He's never been to decision, and he's coming in on short notice. And both these guys are serious finishers. Malarkey, 87% finish rate, Prado, a 100% finish rate. And I think it's Prado early, and I think it's Malarkey, could be early as well, but I'm thinking second round here. This is one of my favorite fights in the prelims.
Yeah, dude, this is the one guy I actually got to watch tape on that I haven't seen yet in Prado. And this is a guy you got to be very careful with, man. You know, if you got to watch the tape on him, you got to see where you think he might be weak, because if you just stand in the pocket with this dude and throw with him, I've seen Prado get hit clean by pretty much everybody that he's fought, but the problem is it doesn't seem to bother him, you know? And if we find out, Brady, that this guy Prado is very durable, I think he's going to smoke Malarkey. Because when you look at the way that this guy swings when he's in front of people, if you don't try to wrestle him and he can absorb 2 or 3 of your best shots, you're getting slept. Dude, these knockouts that I saw Prado get, I'm screaming at the ref who clearly can't hear me because it's on YouTube and the fight happened 6 to 12 months ago. And I'm like, stop the fight. It looks like he's going to paralyze dudes. So, and he's only 20 years old. This guy took his first pro fight at the age of 17. He's an exciting fighter, but you said it perfectly. Dude, he's fighting guys in Samurai House promotion that are not high-level guys. But if you stand in front of this dude and just trade with Francisco Prado, I think he's going to hit you harder than you hit him. And I think he's going to get you clean, and I think he's going to get you out of there. So I think Malarkey's going to have to fight smart here. But Brady, we got some really good evidence that he might do that, right? 33 takedowns attempts in only 6 UFC fights. He's gotten 10 of them. He's controlling his opponents 22% of the time, while only being controlled 8% of the time. When he fought Fares Ziam, who's a very clean kickboxer, he didn't want any part of Fares's stand-up. So I think that we might see Jamie wrestle early here. And if he does that in the first round, he should win this fight, right? Because Prado's taking it on short notice. He's going all the way from Argentina to Australia to take this fight on short notice. He's going to have to cut a bunch of weight probably in order to get there. And after that, then you have to worry about an adrenaline dump. You have to worry about nerves. It's a debut. It's a huge step up in competition against guys like Malarkey, who's been in there with Michael Johnson, who's fought everybody and has beaten guys like Dustin Poirier and Tony Ferguson, right? And then you got Jalen Turner and Devontae Smith, Kama Worthy, Fares Ziam. And then you look at the names on Prado's resume. It's Jose Vargas, Adrian Peroni, Mauricio Pare, Diego Basualdo, Gabriel Ribeiro. You know, I don't know who any of these guys are, and I don't think anybody else does either. So Malarkey has to fight smart, though, in my opinion. If he goes out there like a dumbass and just trades in the pocket with this dude, he might wind up looking up at the lights wondering what the hell happened. So I'm really looking forward to this fight. And what do we have for fight doesn't go to decision or an under here, Brady?
Yep. So like I said, I got the under last week on DraftKings at -130. It's moved a little bit. The under right now is -145. And then the fight doesn't go to decision is only -175, but that's on 5 dimes.
Okay. Yeah. So we can't really get that. But yeah, with Malarkey having an 86.67% finish rate and with Prado having a 100% finish rate, and we've seen Malarkey get finished in 3 of his 5 losses. And even the ones where he's not getting finished, man, he's in a wars. He's getting dropped. You know, Malarkey's hittable too. Let's face it, you know, 53% striking defense, 57% distance defense. He lands 4.88, but he's absorbing 5.55. And his opponents outthrow him as well, volume-wise. So, yeah, I mean, be careful. Be careful. Malarkey's got to fight smart here, man. And if he doesn't, boy, it's gonna be a butthole puckerer when you're laying that juice. When you watch the way that this guy Prado swings those hooks, man, he's looking to punt your head into the 15th row, and he's done it a few times.
Yeah, and it's a lot of juice. Malarkey opened up -250, is currently -270. Prado opened up +210. He's currently +230. That's why I'd rather lay -270 on Loma, because I'm not worried about Elise Reed going out there and completely starching her, right? Whereas Prado, Prado, that could very well happen. That's on the table.
Yeah, dude, it could happen with Prado. Yeah, you're not really worrying about Reed just taking off Loma's head, right? You know, I mean, Loma's mean. She throws those elbows. Her stand-up is clean. And Loma's been in the gym since what? Like, she was like born in the gym. She's been Muay Thai fighting since she was like far too young to be Muay Thai fighting. So, yeah, with this guy Prado and with Malarkey being stopped in 3 of his 5 pro losses and really having a tendency to get into some wars, like that Riddell fight was an absolute war. man, if he fights like that with Prado, he's going to give Prado a chance. And that's what worries me here. But, dude, what a fun fight this is going to be.
Oh, this fight is going to be freaking awesome. I like both guys. I like Prado a lot, and I like Malarkey. They're always in pretty fun and exciting fights. So definitely one I have circled for this card for sure.
Absolutely, man. That's a great one.
Yep, and I think that's another good fight as well. We have Shannon Ross going against Kleydson Rodrigues. We got Ross, who is 33 years old, 5'6" with a 66-inch reach. Kleydson Rodrigues, 27 years old, 5'6" with a 67-inch reach. Rodriguez, 6 years younger. I think that's important, and he's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. Shannon Ross making his debut at almost 34 years old here. So Ross is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He had a knockout loss on the Contender Series. And that was a fight where, if I'm being honest, he impressed me a ton. Went and watched tape on him, watched all his fights. He impressed me a ton. Like, I like this guy. But the one downfall that I saw in the tape was he goes out there and he gets wild, he gets reckless, he gets into these wars, these brawls, and he doesn't have the durability for it. And that showed in that Salvador fight. I was actually shocked, to be honest, not only that he lost, but how that fight played out. Like, he got knocked down 3 times. He got knocked out. And I had no clue, how good this Salvador guy was, because Salvador looked nothing like that on the tape that I watched. And I believe he was coming in on short notice as well. Just a really bad performance by Shannon Ross in that fight. But yeah, the durability issues are something that really scares me, and just his fight style in general. I know it's at flyweight, but his chin's not great. You got Kleydson Rodrigues, a guy that I was very high on coming into the UFC. He fought CJ Vergara, who's a pretty big favorite in that fight. I personally thought he won the fight, but it really could have gone either way. But yeah, Rodriguez, this guy's good. He's only 27 years old. I like how he mixes up the strikes to the head, to the body, to the legs. He has some solid power as well. I think it's going to be a fun fight here. This is another, I think, a sneaky violent spot here, just because of the style of Shannon Ross, the style where he's going to go out there, he's going to get wild, he's going to get reckless, he's going to leave openings to be hit. And Rodriguez has a lot of tools on the feet. So I like Rodriguez here to win. I like him to finish Ross, but this line's gotten away Weezy. Rodriguez opened up around -188. He's now almost -300, which, I think Ross is a skilled fighter. I just think he lacks the durability. So I'm going to be looking at the potential violence here, but I do like Rodriguez to get it done. I think he has more tools here on the feet, and I think he has sneaky finish upside. Weezy, another fun fight here on the prelims.
Yeah, it is. And, I was really high on Kleydson Rodrigues too, so high that I actually parlayed him up with, I forget who, but, he didn't get the job done against CJ Vergara. Very close fight. Vergara reminds me a little bit of Shannon Ross. He kind of goes forward. He's a brawler. He's willing to throw down. He trusts his chin. And, Kleydson is a guy that really uses his kicks well, and he can maintain distance with those kicks. He throws quite a wide variety of strikes. You really don't know what's coming next, but a lot of it comes with power. Seems to be very well-rounded, training out of Team Nogueira, so the guy's the real deal. And, the arrow is pointing up for this kid, obviously. Very, very hot prospect. Well, Shannon Ross, 12-6. And he's 34 years old as a flyweight. So, I mean, boy, and we have to be careful about being like, oh, wow, Shannon Ross impressed me on the Contender Series, because he did impress me with his toughness. He impressed me by being in an absolute war and, weathering a storm and trying to come back and find some success. It didn't work out for him. But, really, at the end of the day, what happened in that fight was he got the shit kicked out of him cleanly, and really, kind of got styled on by a guy that we hadn't seen much on tape from, but he was very unorthodox in Vinicius Salvador, very long, very, very difficult opponent to plan for. But clearly Shannon Ross is a gamer. Clearly he's tough, but the record, man, I think Kleidson's probably just going to be way better than this guy everywhere. I think he's the much cleaner striker. I think he's the far more dangerous grappler. Shannon Ross, one win by submission in his career. The guy does land, try to get knockouts. 50% of his wins by knockout. Rodriguez, 3 wins by knockout, 2 wins by submission for him. So he's kind of an equal opportunity finisher. And, I think that he beat the hell out of Curatolo. I'm surprised Curatolo lasted the full 3 rounds on the Contender Series there. Yeah, I mean, I think Kleydson should be better, but I've already been burned laying juice on this guy once, and it was against a very similar type of fighter in CJ Vergara here. So you won't catch me laying minus 300 on this guy, especially he's going to be in Australia. You know, he's going to be in front of a hostile crowd here. So it's going to be interesting here. But yeah, I think Kleidson's the much better prospect, 6 years younger. You know, he's longer. He's the more dangerous grappler, I think. And, you know, I think he'll manage distance very well as well. I mean, you look at those distance striking stats, and they're pretty good for Kleydson. 9.42 landed, only 6 absorbed. He throws about 5 more significant strike attempts at distance per minute. And, you know, he's landing at 53% at distance, which is very high. But the striking defense at 51%, that's not good for distance, Brady. We need that to be a little bit better. But yeah, I'm going with Kleydson here, but you won't catch me laying that kind of juice on this guy. Fool me once, shame on Weezy. Fool me twice, shame on everybody but Weezy, right? 100%. Or does it go the other way around?
Never take the blame with anything in life, right?
There you go, Brady. You're gonna do very well in marriage.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah, this line movement, man. Rodriguez opened up minus 183. And everybody's smashing it. And now it's minus 300 for Kleydson Rodriguez. And I don't think Shannon Ross is a bum by any means. He's definitely not a bum. I actually like a lot of his game. It's just what concerns me personally is that durability and that style that he does get a little reckless at times. But yeah, Shannon Ross is a big dog here at plus 250. The fight goes to decision minus 150. The fight doesn't go to decision is plus 110 over minus 150. Under plus 120. I don't know if I have anything on this fight, but I'm not touching the minus 300 on Rodriguez here. Maybe I would have took a look at like the minus 190 where it opened up, but now I'm content with just passing.
You know, Brady, there's one guy that we're going to talk about in a few fights here that I've laid juice on, not once but twice, and gotten served both times, dude. And I'll tell you, the second time that you lay juice on a fighter and he burns you, you want to put your fist through the TV, man. And so I am not letting Kleydson Rodriguez do that to me in Australia against this guy, Shannon Ross. So, yeah, I'm going to be staying away.
I know exactly who you're talking about because the exact same thing happened to me. And he's going to get it. I have some things to say about that guy coming up in the main card, but we got a couple more prelims to get to. Before we do so, we have 161 of you in here hanging out, which is the most in a while. I know football's been going on, a lot of stuff's been going on, but do appreciate everybody hanging out. If you guys have not already, be sure to smash the like button, subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Consider becoming a member here on Pub Sports Radio as well. And I say we keep moving on. I think we have 2 prelims left, and we have a very fun fight here. This is a fight that I'm excited to watch as a fan, but as a bettor, I think I'm going to kind of stay away. But we have Josh Culibao. He is 28 years old, 5'10", 73-inch reach. Baghdasaryan, 31 years old, 5'9", with a 70-inch reach. Culibao, 3 years younger. Culibao with a 1 inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage. Culibao is it looks like 3-1 and 1 draw in his last 5 fights. Had a knockout loss against Jalen Turner. He was up a weight class on short notice. No shame in that. Jalen Turner's a killer. Had a draw against Charles Jourdain. Really good performance in a draw. I think Charles Jourdain was a massive favorite in that matchup. I think I had Charles Jourdain in a parlay as well. It ended up being a draw there. Shalian Nurdenbeke decision win. That win's aging pretty well. And then he had a decision win against Sung Woo Choi. Melsik Baghdasaryan, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. He had a decision win on the Contender Series, made his debut against Colin Anglin, won that fight by, I believe it was second-round head kick knockout, and then won a decision against Bruno Souza there. So I'm kind of struggling with this matchup because I think Josh Culibao is extremely underrated. I like this guy quite a bit, but in this fight, I think it's a fight that's going to take place on the feet. Like Josh Culibao, I think he has all the grappling upside, but, you know, is he going to be able to get this fight down to the mat? Josh Culibao, 11 takedown attempts thus far in the UFC. He's completed none of them. And I think Baghdasaryan does have some pretty solid takedown defense. And if this fight is on the feet for 15 minutes, and this is probably a good time to look at these distance strikes, right, Weezy? But if this fight is at distance for 15 minutes, I really like the striking of Baghdasaryan. The problem with Baghdasaryan is he kind of slows down a little bit as the fight goes on, not to the point where it's extremely concerning. Like, he still fights through it, but he clearly does slow down when the fight reaches that second and third round. I think this is a very well-matched fight. This is the closest line fight on the card for a reason, and it's one where I'm just going to stay away. Weezy, any hot takes on this one?
Not really hot takes, but I've been very impressed with Culibao lately. And you look at those last names, the last four names: Sungwoo Choi, Shah Yalan, Jordan, Jalen Turner. I mean, he's been through it, dude. And not only has he been through it, he's 2-1-1. And don't let that split decision against Sungwoo Choi fool you, dude. He won that fight cleanly, man.
Oh, yeah.
That was not a close fight. But you look at the distance striking numbers. This is a fight where it's going to be very important. And we see both guys are doing very well, right? Baghdasaryan landing 5.15, only absorbing about 3.1. But Culibao, he's landing 4.17, only absorbing 2.95. 69% striking defense at range for Joshua Culibao, and a 56% distance striking accuracy for Baghdasaryan. So both of these guys are excelling at winning minutes at range. But Joshua Culibao's 2 years younger. He's an inch taller. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage. He's got 4 more professional fights, so about 110 more minutes in the pro cage. He's got 2 more fights at the UFC level. He's got about 30 more minutes in the UFC cage. In addition to that, I just haven't been impressed with Melsik Baghdasaryan. He came in with a 4-fight winning streak. You remember, Brady? All 4 of those fights added up to something like less than a minute and a half or some shit. And he was just absolutely starching dudes. And then he goes out there against Bazookia. And, I think everyone kind of expected him to go out there and finish that fight in the first round, but it wound up getting dragged out. And then the Anglin fight, he gets the knockout. Bruno Sosa fight was an absolute snoozer, but I think that's kind of on Sosa, because Sosa has that very strange, kind of karate style where he's on his back foot, he's moving a lot, he's trying to maintain range. But I think that this is a big step up for Baghdasaryan. I mean, you look at Baghdasaryan with the DWCS fights, Brady, and then the UFC fights. Dennis Bazookia, Colin Anglin, and Bruno Sosa. The worst fighter that Culibao has fought body bags all 3 of those dudes easily. So this is a huge step up in competition for Melsik. And then in addition, he's flying from Southern California to Australia. Long flight. Not going to be a good crowd here, not going to be a friendly crowd. And also, where the hell has Melsik been? 31 years old. This guy's only got 8 fights as a mixed martial artist. And he's taking off long periods of time in between fights and canceling fights. I'm not high on this guy, dude. And I mean, I've just seen enough out of Culibao for me to be like, I think that this is his fight to lose. I think he can get takedowns if he wants them. And don't forget, Josh Culibao's been doing this for a minute, still only 29 years old. There's going to be improvements from Josh here. While Melsik's rounding out his game too, but he's 31, and we know what his base is. And we've seen Culibao beat guys who have that base, namely Sungwoo Choi. Very, very good striking, Muay Thai champion out of South Korea. And Josh made it look easy against him. So I'm very interested in this fight, but I like Culibao quite a bit. Maybe it's just because I just haven't been impressed with Melsik thus far, but I think Culibao gets this one done.
Yeah, I'm not as confident in the side. I mean, it's a pick 'em. We have Culibao opened up at +110. He's currently -115. Baghdasaryan opened up at -130, currently -105. I think this fight is going to be competitive. I think both guys are going to have their moments. It's a fight I'm just content with kind of staying away from. I don't know about like the fight goes or doesn't go. I think it's one of those fights where it's going to be like an all-out war that probably does end up going to decision. So I'm just going to stay away from just really everything in this fight. Any thoughts on the line at a pick 'em right there, and any thoughts on like a total or anything?
I thought Culibao would be like -175, to be honest with you, but I got to go back and watch the tape on Melsik. I got to watch that Anglin fight. I got to watch that Bazookia fight. But Culibao is, I even got the notebook out because I'm like, I'm going to be taping that fight as soon as we're done and looking at that money line pretty big.
Yeah, just don't watch the Bruno Souza fight unless you want to fall asleep.
I know. Maybe that'll be what I do at about 2:30 in the morning when it's time for your Uncle Weezy to sack out, you know?
Yeah, that's a good
because I forgot where I put my copy of Namajunas versus what was that one? For Christ's sake, I'm already
Sparza,
forgot.
right? Sparza.
Yeah, that was horrible. Sparza, yeah, that was just awful.
That was awful. All right, we got one more fight left on the prelims. We have Tyson Pedro going against Modestas Bukauskas. We got Pedro, 31 years old, 6'3" with a 79-inch reach. Bukauskas, 28 years old, 6'3", 78-inch reach. Bukauskas 3 years younger, and Bukauskas is going to be at a 1-inch reach disadvantage. Tyson Pedro, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. A submission win against Saperbeg Safarov, a submission loss to Ovince St. Preux, a knockout loss to Shogun, a knockout win against Ike Villanueva, and a knockout win against Harry Hunsucker. As far as Bukauskas, he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He had a knockout loss to Jimmy Crute, a decision loss to Mikhail Olazechuk, a knockout loss to Roundtree. Had that injury due to the Roundtree knockout, and then he took some time off, and he won 2 fights outside the UFC, and he's back here on short notice. Tyson Pedro, forget he was supposed to fight, but his opponent pulled out. In steps Modestas Bukauskas. And I'll be honest, this is probably the fight I'm least looking forward to. Like, I could really care less about this fight. I've never been high really on either of these guys, especially Bukauskas. I just don't really like his style. He's kind of a light heavyweight point fighter. And I feel like he could potentially win minutes in this fight just because Tyson Pedro's so low volume, but all the power upside is going to be on Pedro. Pedro hits very hard. But man, this is a big step up in competition for Pedro, fighting just complete bums like Harry Hunsucker and Ike Villanueva. It's a fight I want nothing to do with. I'm staying away. I don't want anything to do with the total. I don't want anything to do with the money line. And speaking of the money line, we saw Tyson Pedro open up -1,000 for some reason. Not sure what happened there, but I'm assuming somebody probably did get fired, and that line has just crashed down. He went from -1,000 to -237 currently, and then Bukauskas is open +700, and he's currently +202. To be honest, I kind of hate this fight, so I'm going to stay away. Don't really like either guy. I don't know. Weezy, any thoughts on this fight here?
Well, the thoughts are, if I had seen Bukauskas at +700, that would have been a 1-unit bet for me, just at that line, because I knew I could have arbed out of it just because that's such a huge mistake. Look, if you lay -1,000, now I know that's not the line anymore, but on a guy who lost to Mauricio Shogun Hua and Ovince St. Preux back-to-back, not in 2006, not in 2010, but like in 2019, he's losing to those guys. To Shogun Hua, who just got destroyed, mollywopped by Ihor Potieria. Okay? That is something that I'm very worried about. Tyson's looked fantastic, but Hunsucker and Villanueva tell us nothing. And there was a 3-year layoff. There were injuries, if I'm not mistaken. And prior to that, you got losses to Shogun Hua and Ovince St. Preux. So I'm looking for reasons to bet Bukauskas here. But he's taking the fight on short notice. He's flying from Lithuania to Australia. Not a good flight either. Probably just as shitty as the United States to Australia. So, he's up against it here, fighting in front of a hostile crowd on short notice against a guy who's on a 2-fight winning streak and who's looking pretty good, frankly. But it's a big step up in competition. Bukauskas has got excellent conditioning. He can win minutes at range. Very close split decision loss to Mikhail Olexejczyk. I had a bet on Olexejczyk in that fight, and it was not a good bet. It cashed, but it was not a good bet. That was a very close fight, and I thought Modestas actually won it. So if you're winning, minutes on the feet against a guy like Olexejczyk, you can win minutes on the feet against a guy like Tyson Pedro. Plain and simple, in my opinion. So, yeah, this is going to be an interesting fight. But I would have really loved to have seen that +700 opener on Bukauskas. I would have taken a swing at that.
Yeah, I wonder if anybody got on that. It looks like it was out there for 18 minutes.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have caught it, but that's wild, man. -1,000. Bukauskas is not Harry Hunsucker, and he is not Ike Villanueva. I'll tell you that.
That is very true. But I saw Glenn in the chat saying no distance. I don't even like it's minus 305. I really don't want to lay much chalk on this fight. And I think if there is a finish, it's probably Pedro. And I think if this does go to decision, it could be Bukauskas maybe outpointing him across 3 rounds.
It potentially could. Yeah. I mean, but Pedro's going to have to try to take this guy down, but he's only gotten 2 takedowns in 8 UFC fights. And Bukauskas has got good takedown defense, a good get-up game, and excellent conditioning. So if you try to wrestle early and often against this guy and you're not successful doing it, he'll take over against you down the stretch and really wear you out. And that's what he's done a lot. That's how he's won a lot of his fights. He gets wins late. He uses that conditioning, that pace, that power, and he wears you out when you try to grapple him because he would prefer to stand. And I don't know if Pedro is going to be able to get this fight to the ground. And if he wants to stand with Bukauskas for 3 rounds, he's going to give Modestas the fight he wants, and you're probably going to want to be on that plus money side.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't even know if he's going to like the last time he's completed a takedown was back in like 2016. That was a while ago.
Yeah, it's too long ago, but we know that Tyson Pedro is very explosive everywhere he goes, whether it's with his submissions or even on the feet. The guy can get you out of there. So I'm excited to see this fight. I don't know if I'll have any action on it, but it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it's probably my least favorite fight on the card, but it should be interesting potentially. But yeah, we'll move on to the main card. We have, oh boy, here it is. We have Alonzo Menifield going against Jimmy Crute. We got Menifield, 35 years old, 6 foot with a 76-inch reach. We got Jimmy Crute, 26 years old, 6'2" with a 74-inch reach. Jimmy Crute, 9 years younger. Jimmy Crute with a 2-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach disadvantage. Alonzo Menifield is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. A submission win against Fabio Charant, a decision win against Ed Herman, a decision loss to William Knight, a knockout win against Askar Murzarov, a knockout win against Misha Serkinov. As far as Jimmy Crute goes, he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, a submission loss to Misha Serkinov, a submission win against Mikhail Olozaychuk, a knockout win against Modestas Bukauskas, a knockout loss to Anthony Smith, and Jamal Hill. So I think Jimmy Crute is extremely talented. You know, he's only 26 years old. This guy has a ton of pop on the feet, you know, improved striking, but it's his wrestling, it's his grappling especially that is most impressive about Jimmy Crute. This guy's super dangerous on the mat. You know, he has a submission win over Paul Craig. You know, that tells you everything you need to know, right? The problem with Jimmy Crute is he has probably, what do you say, pound for pound, the worst fight IQ in the UFC. And we talked about it a little bit earlier against Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith, who gets taken down by a gust of wind, right? Jimmy Crute goes out there, decides to stand with him, is losing all the striking exchanges, and getting his leg completely tore up. And as soon as his leg is injured, that's when he decides, hey, I think it might now be a good time to go out there and wrestle. And what happens? He takes down Anthony Smith 3 times with a hurt leg easily. And then against Jamal Hill, you got to think, hey, maybe Jimmy Crute learned his lesson. Maybe he's going to go out there and use his bread and butter, his grappling, take the fight down to the mat. But no, he goes out there, he tries to strike with Jamal Hill. He gets dropped in the first 30 seconds, tries to strike with him some more, and gets knocked out. So the worry with Jimmy Crute is, you know, the fight IQ. You know, Jimmy Crute needs to, in this fight especially, you know, get the fight down to the mat. Could you have success against Alonzo Menifield in the striking? Sure, potentially, but that's giving Menifield his only path to victory, which is going to be a knockout. What my concerns here for Jimmy Crute, especially at chalk, are a couple things. The first thing, like I said, the fight IQ. Is he going to go for takedowns? We'll have to see. And the second thing is, I think Menifield's takedown defense is phenomenal. I think his takedown defense is 91%. And if Jimmy Crute does not have success taking him down, and this is on the feet, that's going to give Menifield opportunities to knock out Jimmy Crute, who's been knocked out in his last 2 fights, who's been away for a while, who's coming off of, like I said, back-to-back knockout losses. And Menifield, he does one thing very well, and that's he hits very hard. So this is a line that, I don't know, it just kind of, I'm not laying minus 190 on Jimmy Crute. I've learned my lesson. And if anything, it's probably a shot on Alonzo Menifield. But what I like more than anything, this is probably my favorite violent spot on the card. We have a striker versus grappler matchup. And not saying Jimmy Crute can't have success in the striking, potentially knock out Menifield. We saw OSP knock out Menifield. But if Crute gets the fight down to the mat, this guy's serious. And then on the feet, Menifield has a ton of power as well. So I'm going to be looking at violence, but from a money line perspective, it's absolutely dog or pass. And I am kind of tempted on the Menifield money line, but I know if this fight does get extended, I do think that's trouble for Menifield, but I think he's very live for a first round knockout. Weezy, how do you feel about this fight? And how do you feel about Jimmy Crute? Any thought, like, what do you think his haircut's going to be this week? You think he's going to keep the mullet, or you think he's going to, learn from that and shave it? What do you think?
Yeah, he's a young man. He's only 27, so we just got to hope that he learns from his mistakes, from the bad fight IQ in the Smith fight, the bad fight IQ in the Hill fight, the bad fight IQ in the barber's chair. We've got to hope that he can grow from all these mistakes that he has been making. And I laid juice on Jimmy Crute against Anthony Smith, and I think it was around minus 200.
Yeah, it was.
All right. I laid juice on Jimmy Crute against Jamal Hill. Dude, I think he was around minus 200. The thought of laying juice on Jimmy Crute makes me want to puke. It really does. It makes me sick to my stomach. But, my God, Jimmy Crute's been in there with the champ. He's been in there with Anthony Smith. He's been in there with Serkinov, with Oleksiejczuk, with Bukauskas. And you look at the wins for Alonzo Menifield. They're not good wins. It's Vinicius Mojeda. It's Fabio the Water Buffalo Charant. It's Askar Mozarov, who actually lied about his record to get into the UFC. And then it was a washed Misha Serkinov in his last fight. And Misha's looked washed for a minute, This is a big step up for Alonzo Menifield. It really is. And Crute is going to be the better wrestler here. But you're right. Menifield's got phenomenal takedown defense. It's like trying to take down a statue. The guy's huge. He's muscle on top of muscle. His legs are like fire hydrants. And he's really hard to take down and hold down. He spends, it looks like 58% of his fights are taking place at distance. So that means about 42% taking place in grappling range. And he's winning those grappling exchanges. I mean, Crute's winning 66.67, 2/3 of the grappling exchanges in his fights. But Menifield's winning 82.8% of them. He's really doing a good job of not only stopping takedowns, but getting takedowns when his opponent is weak there. So Alonzo has been growing into becoming a mixed martial artist. He's at the right place to do it over at Fortis MMA. Saif Saud about as good of the coaches that are out there right now. You see fighters grow under Saif Saud. Another guy who's there, Kennedy Nchekwu, who all of a sudden, Brady, he's starting to put it together, man. He's starting to wrestle. He's starting to show some power on the feet, showing good grappling defense, being in there with guys like Danilo Marquez, being in there with guys like, I forget who the most recent really good grappler that Kennedy faced, but Paul Craig. Right? Menifield is starting to mix in the grappling and use it when his opponent is deficient there, and he's able to stop takedowns too. So this is a very intriguing fight for me because this is not easy for Jimmy Crute. He's been away from the cage for a while. I'm sure he's going to be making improvements because he's so young, still only 27 years old. I've been really hard on Jimmy Crute, but Jimmy Crute could be a champion someday if he puts it all together. So, and this is, Menifield going all the way to Australia to fight in Australia, and that's not a good thing here. And when you look at the wins, what do you think Jimmy Crute would do to Serkinov at this point? I know he lost to him some years back, but he probably stands with Serkinov and knocks him out, Or what do you think he does to Askar Mozarov? He takes him down and he pounds him out. Ed Herman is collecting Social Security right now, so I'm pretty sure that Crute beats him. He beats Fabio Charant. He body bags Vinicius Moreira, Daniel Jolly, all these other guys that he's beaten. So we've got to wait and see for Menifield to actually get a signature win at this level. The combined records of the guys that he's beaten are 28 and 33 at the UFC level. So Jimmy Crute, on the other hand, is fighting guys that have a 43 and 32 record overall, and his most recent loss is to the champion. Oh man, it's a hard fight to get a handle on because it's such a huge step up for Menifield, because Menifield's making this long trip to fight Crute on his home soil. But then you've also got to worry about, will Crute be able to get this fight to the ground? And if he doesn't, is he going to get knocked out like he did by Jamal Hill, or is he going to get his calf shut down but with one kick? Because you watch that Anthony Smith fight, Crute kicks Smitty in the calf like 6 or 7 times. And then Smith lands one goddamn calf kick, and it shuts down Crute's leg. So I'm worried about Crute here. I'm not laying juice on him. Fool me once, fool me twice. Yeah. 3 times ain't going to happen. Not this week, Brady. I'm going to be staying away from that Jimmy Crute money line. And I promise you that if I do, you have my permission to send the orderlies over here, put me in that padded room, give me some time to think about what I did.
Yeah, laying chalk on Jimmy Crute is not something I'm interested in doing anytime soon. He opened up minus 230, currently minus 210. Menifield opened up plus 195, currently plus 180. The over under set at 1.5 rounds, the over 1.5 minus 125, the under 1.5 minus 105. The fight goes to decision plus 205. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 285. Yeah, I don't hate that under. I saw Glenn talking about it in the chat. I like that under 1.5 rounds. I think if Crute gets the fight down to the mat, the guy's a freaking savage, and on the feet, I think both guys actually have opportunities to knock either guy out. Like, Crute has a ton of power, and I think he's a good striker. It's just, I mean, you're better at the grappling, and you're going to have a big advantage in the grappling, so take it. But Crute has a ton of power. He starched Bukauskas in that first round. So I'm liking violence here, if anything. Maybe that under 1.5 at around even money.
That's not a bad look either, because we do see that Jimmy Crute has finished all of his UFC wins. Alonzo Menifield has finished all but one of his UFC wins. So 9 of these guys' 10 UFC wins coming inside the distance. And guess what? Neither one of them is really durable either. Menifield's been finished in 1 of 3 losses, and Crute's been finishing all 3 losses at the UFC level. So yeah, man, violence is probably a good way to look, but I'm sure the bookies are onto it.
Yeah, they're pretty much onto it. All right, let us go to the people's main event here on the main card. Actually shocked this is on the main card, but we have Justin Tafa going against Parker Porter. We have Tafa, 29 years old, 6 foot with a 74-inch reach. Parker Porter, 37 years old, 6 foot with a 75-inch reach. Tafa, 8 years younger, and Tafa is going to be at a 1-inch reach disadvantage. So Tafa is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, made his debut against Yorgan De Castro, got knocked out in 60 seconds, knocked out Juan Adams after that. Split decision loss to Carlos Felipe and Jared Vanderaa, and then knocked out Harry Hunsucker. My goodness, why is this fight on the main card? Parker Porter, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, a knockout loss to Chris Daukaus, a decision win over Josh Parisian, Chase Sherman, and Alain Badeau, and then he lost by submission against Charlton Almeida. Yeah, I don't know, Weezy. I don't know what to do with this one. I feel like Parker Porter can very well just be the minute winner here. Like, what really concerns me for Tafa, especially at chalk, is the fact that he lost to Jared Vanderaa, and Vanderaa was just able to outwork him across 15 minutes. And I feel like that could be the case here, right? But Parker Porter, he's just not that durable. He's been finished in all of his losses. He had that 1 DQ loss, but he's been knocked out 3 times. He's been submitted 3 times. And like I said, had that DQ. And Tafa has a ton of power. So I think a way I'm going to play this is if I'm going to look at the line, like Tafa finish only. If that's playable, I'll probably be taking a look at that. And then Porter decision only. If that's playable, I'll probably be taking a look at that. Because if this fight does go 15 minutes, I think Porter's just going to outwork him, maybe mixing a takedown here or there. And then if this fight does finish, I think it's going to be Justin Tafa going out there and getting the knockout. So if anything, like from a money line standpoint, it's dog or pass, just because I can't trust somebody who lost to Jared Vanderaa at chalk. It just doesn't make sense. It probably would be dog or pass, but I can't really see myself betting a money line in this fight. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this freaking mess?
You summed it up pretty well, my friend. I mean, like, you look at those wins for Porter at the UFC level. Josh Parisian, Chase Sherman, and Alain Badeau. And then you look over to Tafa and you're like, oh my God, Parker Porter's wins are spectacular, because this guy's beaten Juan Adams and Harry Hunsucker, and then he loses to Yorgan De Castro, cut. Carlos Felipe, cut. Jared Vanderaa, you're cut. Dude, Justin Tafa, I mean, I have no clue how, if this guy wasn't Australia and they didn't have fights in Australia, there would be no way he would be in the UFC. This guy's a joke. And I mean, at least Parker Porter can wrestle, and at least he's actually won some minutes at range with decent strikers at the UFC level. I mean, I think Parker Porter is the much better fighter here, the much better fighter. I am so unimpressed with Justin Tafa that it's not even funny. I think he's terrible. But, oh, God, I mean, like, Parker Porter lost minutes to Alan Badeau.
He did.
You know, I mean, oh, God, man, this is a mess. I still, Brady, might get to a Parker Porter bet because I could see him getting takedowns, right? We haven't even seen anybody try to take Justin Tafa down. He's only faced 2 takedown attempts in his entire UFC career of 5 fights. And I mean, this guy's got no ground game at all. He's a pure striker. So I think Parker can take this guy down and win minutes on the ground. And I think Parker might even be the better striker here. I don't know who Justin Tafa is better than in this division. Can we name one UFC heavyweight that Justin Tafa deserves to be a favorite against, that not in Australia with his opponent making literally like a 15,000-mile trip? I don't get this fight, but I'm picking Porter. There's no way I'm not picking Justin Tafa against anybody at the UFC level. I think he's extremely, I mean, I wouldn't even call him overrated. I don't know who's rating this guy, but I mean, I'm on Porter.
Yep. If as far as a pick, I'm picking Porter as well. Tafa opened up a pick'em -115, currently -135. Porter opened up -105, currently +115. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm going to look at the finish only for Tafa or the decision only for Porter. And if I was forced to bet this fight, it would be Parker Porter at plus money. But even then, I don't feel good about it. Like the Badeau fight really scares me for Parker Porter. I don't know what the heck happened in that fight where Badeau was like on his way to winning the fight somehow. And then Badeau started like showboating in the 3rd round. And then Porter ended up taking him down and winning the fight. But that fight was a lot closer than it really needed to be. Yeah, this is just a terrible fight, to be honest. I'm not looking forward to this one.
Yeah, this is the heavyweight division, man. It's rough. You know, like a guy like Sergey Spivak. I said this a long time ago on Z's Fair Play podcast. We were talking about Aspinall versus Spivak. And I was saying, you know, like if this wasn't a short notice fight, Spivak fighting Aspinall, that, you know, it would be interesting because we hadn't really seen Aspinall's takedown defense. And if he's fighting a fresh Sergey Spivak, if you can just get takedowns at the UFC level, you can not only win fights, but finish fights. I mean, like, whether you just have power like Derek Lewis, or whether you just have some wrestling like Sergey Spivak, or whether you just have good conditioning like some guys have, you can find ways to win fights in this division because the level of skill is comically low compared to the lower weight classes here. And this is what happens, man. These guys are UFC fighters and they shouldn't be. And the reason that that there should be better guys here is there should be more athletes in this division, but there just aren't. And if you don't have that athletic ability, it's very hard to be well-rounded and skilled everywhere. And most of these guys aren't. And I don't even know where these guys are skilled, but I do know that Parker Porter is the better wrestler and grappler here.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Parker Porter, I think a skill that I do like out of the guy, I think he has solid cardio for a heavyweight and solid output as for a heavyweight as well. So those are kind of the things I do like about Porter. Tafa, I think he just has power, and that's really it.
Yeah, and you're right, dude. If you look at distance, right? Porter throwing 17.5 significant strike attempts per minute at distance, while Tafa's throwing 9.78. So he's almost doubling the volume. But Tafa, his opponents throw 12.54, while Porter's opponents throw 16.93. So Porter throws a lot more volume, and Tafa's a lot lower volume than his opponents. So, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely possible that Porter wins minutes in the stand-up, too. So, yeah, I think the Parker Porter money line at plus money, it's worth a shot. There's a reason to do it, but he could just fly all the way to Australia and just look like shit just because that's just an awful flight to have to make.
Yeah, I wonder if Porter is in Australia yet. I mean, that'd be something cool to know. So
yeah,
maybe
I'll check the Instagram or something like that.
Yeah. I did check Instagram to see Jimmy Crute's haircut. It looks like he shaved off the mullet, by the way.
All right, that's good. That's good. That's a step in the right direction. He's growing as a man and as a fighter.
Yep, agree. All right, Weezy, this is a really good fight. We're going to end the show with 3 really good fights. We have Jack Della Maddalena going against Randy Brown. We got Jack, he's 26 years old, 5'11" with a 73-inch reach. Randy Brown, he is 32 years old, 6'3" with a 78-inch reach. Jack's going to be 6 years younger. It's going to be Brown, who's going to be much bigger with a 4-inch height advantage and a 5-inch reach advantage. Jack Della Maddalena, he's 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Had his Contender Series fight against Angelusa. He knocked out Pete Rodriguez, knocked out Ramazan Ameev, and then knocked out Danny Roberts. 3 first-round knockouts in the UFC thus far for Jack Della Maddalena. Randy Brown, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Got knocked out by Vicente Luque, submitted Alex Oliveira, won a decision against Jared Gooden, Chaos Williams, and Francisco Trinaldo. So, yeah, obviously a lot of hype on Jack Della Maddalena, and I think it's warranted. I think this guy's good. I think this guy's going to have a very bright future. He's only 26 years old. Really like this guy striking, but it is going to be a pretty big step up in competition, going from someone like Danny Roberts to Randy Brown, who has very good size for the division. Like the movement of Randy Brown, solid power, good submission game as well. Lots of reasons to like Randy Brown, but I think Jack's the real deal here. He's a big favorite. I don't know if I want to lay that price tag on him, but as far as a pick, I do like Jack Della Maddalena here, and I like him to win by knockout. Randy Brown, he does leave some openings to be hit. He has been knocked down quite a few times. He's been finished, I think, in 3 of his 4 losses as well. Got knocked out twice in the UFC, once by Nico Price, once by Vicente Luque, who are both killers, don't get me wrong, but I like the striking of Jack. I think he has solid power, and I think he does knock out Randy Brown, but I think Brown could definitely have some success in this matchup. I think this line could be potentially a little bit wide, but I got to stick with Jack here. I think he's the real deal, and I think he passes this big step up in competition. Weezy, how do you feel about this fight here?
Yeah, this is a great one, man. And Maddalena, you say it all the time, Brady. Hype drives the line, and this is hype. This is hype driving this line because Maddalena is still only 26 years old, still growing. But he's 4 inches shorter. He's at a 5-inch reach disadvantage here. And Randy Brown has fought the much better level of competition at the UFC level. Combined records of his opponents, 94 and 61. So really good numbers there for Randy Brown. He's beating guys with winning records as well. Well, it looks like I didn't paste in Maddalena's strength of schedule stats here, but he's beating guys like Danny Roberts, Ramazan Ameev, and Pete Rodriguez. So about 500 competition, as Ameev had some wins, but recently lost a couple in a row and has been out of the UFC now. So, but Brown's going to have that length, and he's got a very slick submission game as well if this fight does go to the ground. But we don't see Randy Brown really going to that grappling. He's got 18% control time for, but he allows 28%. And Maddalena stays at distance about 85% of the time. And that's really where he does his best work. Man, does Maddalena throw in combination. He's got great power. He just looks like there are not many people that are going to win minutes and moments against him in the striking exchanges at this level. But this is a very big step up in competition in terms of striking acumen, length, experience. For Jack Della Maddalena's opponent here in Brown, because Brown's been around the block, 14 UFC fights, and he's won 10 of them. Over 150 minutes in the UFC cage compared to less than 10 minutes in the UFC cage for Jack Della Maddalena. And even then, we saw Angelusa have him in a really bad spot on the ground in an arm triangle there. And Angelusa not known for being a great grappler. So I think that Brown can find some ways to get this to the grappling, to put, find a way to get Jack into a web here on the ground, use those freakishly long limbs that he has, good front chokes, good triangles. He can wrap you up and take your back. It's going to be an interesting fight here because, with Pete Rodriguez and Danny Roberts, you got 2 guys that are basically strikers. Ameev, a good wrestler, but he got knocked out early in that one. So it's going to be interesting to see if Brown can use that all-around, mixed martial arts skill set to find holes in Maddalena's defense here. But once again, it's a long trip for Randy Brown. He's fighting the hometown guy with a ton of hype right now. and he's still only 26 years old. He's 6 years younger than Randy Brown, and he's, you know, on a big time winning streak here. I think Maddalena might have even lost the first 2 fights of his career and then just ran off a pretty big winning streak here of 13 wins or something. So, yeah, this guy Maddalena is the real deal. I think he'll probably win the minutes on the feet here. But you look at the numbers, right? You see why. 10.25 landed at distance, only 4.73 absorbed. Dude, he's landing more than twice as many significant strikes as his opponents do. And he throws 20.63 per minute and 16.43 coming back his way. 71% striking defense, a 50% distance striking accuracy. And he's landing knockdowns on over 5%, 1 out of 20 of the distance strikes that Jack Della Maddalena lands results in a knockdown. Wow. But you see over that huge sample size of 14 fights and 150 minutes in the pro cage, Brady, that Brown, when he's at distance, he's landing 6 significant strikes a minute and absorbing less than 5. And he throws about almost 3 more significant strike attempts per minute at distance than his opponents do. So Randy Brown certainly no slouch on the feet either. And he's going to be at a 4-inch reach advantage or 5-inch reach advantage here and a 4-inch height advantage. So it'll be interesting to see how Jack deals with Randy Brown's length here. But Jack should be the minute winner, and he could potentially even be the moment winner on the feet here. And we haven't seen Randy Brown go to that grappling enough to make us think that he could win enough minutes on the ground against Jack here to kind of grind out a decision. Haven't really seen Randy do that ever at this level. I don't think he's going to start now at the age of 32 and a half. So I got to believe that Jack Della Maddalena gets the job done and gets it done inside the distance.
Yeah, it looks like Jack opened up minus 350, currently minus 300. Randy Brown opened up plus 285, currently plus 250. The over-under set at 1.5, the over 1.5 minus 185, the under 1.5 plus 155, the over 2.5 plus 120, the under 2.5 minus 150. The fight goes to decision plus 155. The fight doesn't go to decision minus 195. Yeah, this is my second bet of the card. I bet the under 2.5 rounds last week at minus 130, just because Maddalena's only been over that 1.5 round mark once, and it was against Angelusa, which in that fight, like Angelusa is so freaking tough. Like Jack almost finished him like 50 times. But the reason I like it so much is because we have 2 guys that they can absolutely finish and they absolutely can be finished. Like Randy Brown, he's been finished in 3 of his 4 losses, 2 by knockout and 1 by submission. And Jack Della Maddalena, he's been finished in both losses. So that is a combined 5 out of 6 losses these guys have been finished in. Jack with a 92% finish rate. Brown, he has power. He has a good submission game. He has a 69% finish rate. So I'm looking at some violence here potentially, and I'm looking at Jack Della Maddalena to knock out Randy Brown. But yeah, if this fight hits the mat, like you said, Jack was in some tough spots against Angelusa. He was in a really tight spot against Ramazan Ameev as well. So if Randy Brown does get this fight down to the mat, he's a very slick grappler. So I think violence is the best route. But as far as a pick, I will go with Jack to keep the momentum going and keep the hype going here.
Yeah, and it'll be great because if Jack does get this win, that's a great win against a 14-fight veteran who's won 10 of them, a guy with a cheat code height and reach advantage that he has over everybody in the division. You know, Jack's going to have to figure out how to close that distance here, how to stay out of those tricky submissions that Brown throws up. So he gets this win, man, and he's really on his way. And I mean, I think they're going to fast track him if he looks good and looks dominant against Randy Brown.
Yeah, I thought they were going to fast track him after the Ameev win, and then I saw that he was matched up against Danny Roberts. I'm like, what's going on? You're taking a big step back, but yeah, I think this is the rightful step up here against Randy Brown.
Absolutely, man, and I think it's a great fight.
Heck yeah. All right, next we have the co-main event. We have Yair Rodríguez going against Josh Emmett. We got Rodríguez, 30 years old, 5'11", 71-inch reach. Josh Emmett, 37 years old, 5'6", with a 70-inch reach. We have Yair Rodríguez, 7 years younger. Yair Rodríguez with a 4 or 5-inch height advantage and a 1-inch reach advantage. Yair Rodríguez, he is 3-1 and 1 no contest in his last 5 fights. Had the knockout win against the Korean Zombie. Had the no contest against Stevens. The decision win against Stevens. Decision loss against Holloway. and then that injury kind of TKO win against Brian Ortega. And as far as Josh Emmett, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Been on a really good run, Josh Emmett. Knockout win against Michael Johnson, knockout win against Prasad Bektic, a decision win against Burgos, Ige, and Calvin Kattar. What I like most about Josh Emmett is this guy's power. This guy's power is insane. I think he has something like 11 knockdowns in his career here. And I was listening to one of his fights, and they were talking, I think it was the Kattar fight, where Josh Emmett at one point had a knockdown in 7 fights in a row. And if he would have knocked down Calvin Kattar, he would have broke the record for most consecutive fights with a knockdown. Like, this guy's power is no joke. And of course, he didn't knock down Calvin Kattar. That was one of those weird fights where Josh Emmett's knocking down everybody, and Calvin Kattar does not get knocked down by anybody. But yeah, that was a fun fight there. I was actually in attendance for that fight. I thought watching live that Calvin Kattar did do enough to win the fight, but watching it back, I think giving it to Emmett's not the worst thing in the world, just because the striking was competitive, but it was Emmett landing the harder shots. And that's kind of the thing here. I think the striking is going to be very competitive. I like the volume of both guys. But Emmett's power is I think the one thing that really sticks out here. Another thing is, like, Emmett has such a good wrestling background, and he's used it in the past. It's just he has not used that wrestling in years. I think it'd be smart to go to it here, but I really can't trust him to do it. I think Rodriguez is probably the better all-around striker. I think he has a lot more tools in the feet. I think the big cage does favor Yair Rodriguez, but the power of Josh Emmett, I think, is going to make this a very competitive fight. We see Rodriguez is like a minus 150 favorite, but I kind of see this being a close one, Weezy. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, it's hard to count Josh Emmett out of any fight. I mean, he could be losing minutes, just one shot. That's all it takes. I mean, the amount of knockdowns this guy has is crazy. He's landing, 2.16% of his distance strikes are resulting in a knockdown. That's 1.14 per 15 minutes. That's really good. But when you look at these numbers, man, 13.67 significant strikes per minute at distance, only 10.94 coming back Rodriguez's way. He lands 1.4 more significant strikes at distance per minute than he absorbs, while Josh Emmett gets outlanded by about 0.5 significant strikes per minute at distance, and he's getting outthrown by more than 1 significant strike attempt per minute at distance. Yair Rodriguez has never been knocked down in 12 UFC fights, and he's been in there twice with Jeremy Stephens. And Jeremy Stephens is the guy who actually has, I think, the featherweight knockdowns record. Not most consecutive fights, but he's got the record for the division. I mean, the guy 33 fights or something like that at the UFC level, so he racked up some knockdowns, man. The guy's been knocking people down, but Yair doesn't get knocked down, dude. He's incredibly durable. And he's a great minute winner at distance, man. Just look at those significant striking numbers too. I mean, they're really good. 43% accuracy at distance, 69% or 59% defense. These are all really good numbers. The strength to schedule numbers are not in there for Yair. God damn it, I got to put that in there. But Emmett's definitely been fighting really good competition, just like Yair has. But I think Yair has just been a tick better in terms of the competition that he's faced at this level. I'd like to see Josh Emmett wrestle, but I don't think that there's any chance that he will. There's also that rumor that he's got a serious hip injury coming into this fight. And if that's the case, Brady, he's not going to be wrestling here. He's going to be looking to land one big shot. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. The way that Yair Rodriguez was piecing up Max Holloway at distance, if Max Holloway didn't wrestle in that fight, he probably gets 50-45 by Yair. That's scary, because I know you had a big bet on Holloway, and I think I did too, man. And that fight was entirely too close for comfort. And I just remember thinking to myself, man, I'm not gonna think going forward that guys are going to be winning minutes against Yair Rodriguez at distance with how effectively he manages distance with his kicks, Brady. And they're so dangerous. He's got so much variety. The reason he knocks out so many people is because you don't see the shots coming sometimes with him. He's so fast, and he's got such a wide variety of unusual attacks that he's got so many different ways to catch you. He's 7 years younger. He's 5 inches taller. He's got a 1-inch reach advantage. He's got one more fight at the UFC level, a few more minutes in the UFC cage. He's been the better finisher at the UFC level, which is hilarious. Josh Emmett's only finished 3 of his 9 UFC wins, while Yair's finished 4 of them. And then they've both been finished in half of their UFC losses by knockouts. So I do see Yair Rodriguez winning this fight, and I see him winning it by decision.
Shout out to Money Liner Network with a $10 dono saying, great show again, fellas. Had a great week. There you go. Glad to hear. Appreciate the dono, Money Liner Network. Appreciate you. So we'll take a look at the odds here. We see that Yair opened up -160, currently -160. Emmett opened up +140, and he's currently +140. Yeah, I saw a tweet. It wasn't an account I really recognized. Like, it wasn't like a major media outlet or nothing like that said that Emmett was injured. So I don't know how much to take into that, but yeah, we got Rodriguez here as a slight favorite. The props are kind of weird on this one. The fight goes decision -185. The fight doesn't go decision is +155. I would lean it going to decision here, but I feel like there could be a couple knockdowns here or there that make it pretty sketchy. But yeah, I think I'm going to stay away from this fight as of now. Anything sticking out like a prop or a money line, anything sticking out to you, Weezy?
Yeah, what is the fight doesn't go at?
Like -1. Oh, it's +155.
Wow. See, that's something I'm willing to take a chance on, because I mean, even though I do kind of feel like this one does go to decision, can you imagine having an over or a fight goes bet with the guys like Yair Rodriguez and Josh Emmett, 25 minutes with the power that each one of those dudes has? That would be terrifying. So I kind of, if I can get plus money on fight doesn't go, I'd have to see what the analytics say, but that might be a good look here, as these guys both have a ton of power, and I don't think either one of them is wrestling at all here. So if you got, one guy who's landing on half of 1% of the distance strikes that he's landing, and then Emmett over 2% of the distance strikes that he's landing result in a knockdown, there's a pretty good chance that somebody does get slept at some point over 25 minutes with these guys having the kind of power that they do. But I'll have to look into it further with the analytics and see what they say.
Yeah, we'll talk about on probability. I wouldn't mind a shot on violence with the amount of power both these guys have.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad look. And, I think that the analytics will tell you that these fights do finish inside the distance more times than they don't. So if you're getting a plus money number right there, the analytics are already telling you you're probably on the right side.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Weezy, one last fight. We have the main event, Islam Makhachev going against Alexander Volkanovski. We got Makhachev, who is 31 years old, 5'10" with a 70-inch reach. Volkanovski, 34 years old, 5'6" with a 71-inch reach. Islam is 3 years younger. He's going to have a 4-inch height advantage and a 1-inch reach disadvantage. Makhachev, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. He had a submission win against Drew Dober, submission win against Thiago Moises, submission win against Dan Hooker, a knockout win against Bobby Green, and a submission win against Charles Oliveira his last time out to get that lightweight title. Alexander Volkanovski, he had a decision win against Max Holloway, another decision win against Max Holloway, a decision win against Brian Ortega, a knockout win against the Korean Zombie, and then another decision win against Max Holloway. So Volkanovski coming up from featherweight here to take on a much bigger Islam Makhachev. And it's a weird fight because I feel like if Alexander Volkanovski came up to lightweight to fight any other lightweight in the world, I probably would pick him here, but it's really hard for me to pick against Islam Makhachev at this point. I just don't see anybody beating this guy anytime soon. Volkanovski, he has great takedown defense, even better get-up game, but we have seen him taken down before. He got taken down twice by Brian Ortega. And, I feel like I just really struggle seeing Islam not taking down Volkanovski. And once Islam gets you down, man, I mean, you're typically not getting up. And if Volk is able to get up, he's probably going right back down. Volk, to win this fight, he's going to have to keep the fight on the feet for at least 3 out of the 5 rounds or potentially knock out Islam. And I think that's going to be very hard to do. I really struggle to see him winning 3 out of the 5 rounds. And I really struggle to see him coming up here to lightweight and knocking out Islam Makhachev. So I like Islam here, but he's a big favorite. He's like -400, -450. And I think that's super disrespectful to, the number 1 pound for pound guy in the UFC. But I don't know. It's just a very tough ask for Volkanovski to take a step up here in weight class and beat Islam, who, quite frankly, I don't see anybody beating this guy anytime soon. Weezy should be a very fun main event. I think it's a very underrated main event. Don't really see many people hyping this up. But yeah, should be a good one. I'm very interested to see how this plays out.
This is a great main event. It could be one of the best of the year. I mean, regardless of the result, is there two guys that are more dominant in the sport right now? No, there isn't. There's nobody in any division that's sporting the kind of dominance that both of these guys are. Alexander Volkanovski has absolutely cleaned out the featherweight division, and there's nobody in that division that's going to even have any kind of a chance against him. And Makhachev, even though he hasn't even defended the 155-pound belt yet, it just kind of looks like he's going to be champion until he's 34 or 35 years old. The pressure, the wrestling, the top control, the ability to never make mistakes and let your opponent up. If you get a takedown, it just means the fight's over, or that, the bell's going to ring and then you're going to have to go to your corner and go back to the drawing board. And then you're going to get pressured again in the second round. You're going to get taken down again. This guy Makhachev has had 13 UFC fights. He spent 118 minutes in the UFC cage, and he's absorbed less strikes than he's been minutes in the cage. 112 significant strikes absorbed in 118 minutes in the UFC cage. Think about that. Getting hit less than once every 60 seconds in a significant fashion. It's unbelievable, this guy's defense. And then you look at the takedown accuracy. 65.85% takedown accuracy, 27 takedowns in 13 fights. I mean, think about that. 12 wins, and it's only 27 takedowns. It's not even 2.5 takedowns per win. I mean, when this guy gets a takedown, it's basically like a 50% chance that he's going to finish the fight just with one takedown, because he's got 27 takedowns and he's got 12 wins. Think about those kind of numbers. They're unbelievable. And nobody's making these fights even close, other than the Adriano Martins fight where he went out over his feet and got countered and slept. This guy has never been in any trouble at any point in his UFC career. He's so dominant. So it's a tall ask for Volkanovski, being 4 inches shorter than this guy. Makhachev has been wrestling since he was in the womb, basically. And Volkanovski, was playing rugby. He's got a good functional all-around mixed martial arts game. And early in Volkanovski's career, we saw him go to that wrestling over and over again and use it so well. But now the striking is just so good at distance that's where he's winning against people. But Islam Makhachev doesn't allow you to win minutes there. I mean, this guy is only spending 37.8% of his UFC career, his UFC cage time, at distance striking range. That's terrifying against the guy that doesn't lose minutes. 85% of this guy's control time positions were won by him. And for Volkanovski, it's 88.5%. So Volkanovski's actually been more efficient than Islam Makhachev in winning the grappling positions when he's there. But we can go through the film and we could see places where Volk was put in bad spots. We never saw that with Makhachev. We never saw anyone get anywhere close to putting him in a bad spot. So, my thought was just max bet Makhachev wherever the line was, but I thought it wouldn't be as disrespectful to Volkanovski. So, unfortunately, I think I'm just going to have to pass on this fight because, I'd probably max bet Makhachev at minus 250, but at minus 400, man, to win 1 unit, a little over 1 unit, I don't think it's good enough.
Yeah, I think he does win, but yeah, minus 400, I don't know about that. Makhachev opened up minus 330. He went all the way down to minus 450. He's now minus 400. Volkanovski opened up plus 270, went all the way to plus 350s, now to plus 300. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like these totals. Like the over 1.5 is getting smashed. I get that. The over 2.5 is getting smashed, and these violence numbers are coming down a little bit. Like the fight doesn't go to decision on 5 dimes is only minus 145. Like I know Volkanovski's super tough. He showed toughness in the Ortega fight, but still he still got himself into some bad spots. And I don't know. I feel like Makhachev does finish him here in this matchup at some point. Makhachev's finished his last 5 wins. Makhachev's finished 8 out of 11 wins. And I just think at some point he is going to catch him in something. So Makhachev inside the distance is around minus 110. Pick him. Any thoughts on the total? Are you thinking decision? Are you thinking inside the distance? What are you thinking here?
Well, think about it, man. Right? I mean, like even in that Ortega fight, dude, how the hell did that go the distance? I mean, I don't know if it went, but he beat the shit out of Ortega for 4.5 rounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although that 5 rounds, full 5 rounds, that fight should have been stopped. That fight should have been stopped. I mean, Ortega was getting killed in there. If he had a couple of submission attempts, but other than that, I mean, like Volkanovski was putting it on him. So let's say that there are some rounds where Volkanovski stays on the feet here. He's knocking out Islam Makhachev probably. But goddamn, dude, how good did Islam's striking look against Oliveira, who's much longer? He just looks unbeatable. So yeah, I mean, at minus 140 for an 155-pound fight, that's not a bad look at all.
Yeah, and I think the line might just keep coming down because money's pouring in on these overs. So I'll be looking at that. We'll talk about it on probability, but I'm sure, almost certain that's going to stick out from as a good bet there. So yeah, Weezy, we did it. We went through 13 fights. Any final thoughts on the card? I think it's a pretty solid one. I'm liking a lot of the prelims. I'm not sure why the Porter fight is on the main card, but other than that, I think it's a pretty good card overall.
They do these heavyweight fights on main cards is like the second fight. Yeah, some kind of formula the UFC has that tells them that that's what they need to do. But the thought is that, like I said, we got the reverse shit sandwich here. Instead now we've got the bread in the middle and then the shit's on the outside. And that was the Spivak card, and it's going to be the Tyler Santos Blanchfield card. This is a great card. A lot of great fights. Really looking forward to digging further into this now that all the stats are done. I'm going to be getting my prop template out to the Patreon members tonight, and I'm going to start taking a long look at some of these time props for this one too. Great card. Can't wait to gamble on this one, Brady, and stack some tickets, man, and get them high. Put some syrup, some butter on those flapjacks, and just enjoy them with some bookie tears maybe a little bit.
Let's do it. Yeah, a couple spots sticking out. So I'll have to take a look. Hopefully they get the props out soon. It's a pay-per-view card. Expecting maybe DraftKings and FanDuel to get on it a little bit earlier this week and see if we can find some spots. So yeah, we did it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Weezy, let the people know where they can find you, what you have going on throughout the week. I'm sure you're back to your normal schedule, right?
Yes, I am. I'm back to Chicago. I will not be leaving Chicago until September, I think, when I go to Greece, my friend. But yes. So you can find me tomorrow on the MMA Engine YouTube channel, 1 hour before Clint goes live on Pub Sports Radio for the Die Hard MMA podcast. We're going to break down all 13 of these fights and look at the time props and give you a data-driven look at all the time props on that card. On Tuesday, you can find me on my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy, 10 o'clock Central Time. We're going to break down all 13 of these fights from a stats and tape study perspective. I'll give you all my track bets on the card, and then we will also finish with Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. And on Wednesday, I do the DFS show on Pub Sports Radio, and I'll be doing Ask Weezy on my channel. I won't be doing Ask Weezy this week because I'll be joining Patrick from Addicted to Combat on his channel to break down these fights. So busy week for me, but I would love being busy on weeks where we have pay-per-views and great fights like this one. So let's stack them high, Brady. Let's really make some money on this card and enjoy these fantastic fights.
Yeah, and I believe you're on Best Bet this week as well with me, Lou, and I think Billy Briz.
Okay, let's go, man. It's a great week. It's a great week to be busy, man. These are great fights.
And Preston saying Southtown 101 has underrated flapjacks. Do they? I didn't even know that.
Kidding.
I know they have good burgers, but I didn't know about the flapjacks. I'm going to have to try them out
nice.
In March there. But yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers. On YouTube, I just posted a main event prediction for Volkanovski, Makhachev on my channel not too long ago. Full card breakdown will be out tomorrow. But yeah, other than that, best of luck for UFC 284. Should be a fun card. Like, subscribe, become a member here at Pub Sports, and check out that weekly competition at pubsportsradio.com. I will certainly be in there this week trying to win that $100 first place prize. See you guys later, and good luck.